So, welcome back to the Chasing Common Ground podcast. It is once again bit of a lull since my last episode, and that is just because life has been lifing, which is a big part of what we may dive into in today's conversation. I've brought the one and only Paul Buono to the show, and we are going to kind of get right into it. However, I just need like a real short intro of who you are, because I have some dedicated listeners where you're not on their radar yet, but you will be. So they're gonna know that you're a coach, but outside of that, who are you?
Yeah. Well, I know that we just talked slightly about mindfulness. So, wow, what a question to start with. But we'll go super basic. I am a coach. I help men and women, people over 35, build muscle, lose weight, just to kind of feel pain free and live a really great life. But outside of what I do for work, I'm a son, I'm an uncle, I'm a brother, friend, and all of those different identities are really as important for me as being a coach.
Mm,
Yeah, that's what I do.
Great. Perfect intro. Really kind of resonate with that because I think a lot of people kind of forget who they are outside of like their ambitions and their pursuits and stuff. And something that's been top of mind for me, like in the last 24 hours, I would say, is catching myself where I think the best way to put this is forgetting to allow blessings kind of thing. And I'll explain it a bit further. So like for me, because I've been so like career focused, I'm really bad at like accepting help and asking for help. And this is something that, like, even just yesterday, one of my coaches or my main coach broke. Basically the arm segmented from like the base of the couch. And then if I sat down, it would scratch up the floor. And I was, well, that's not good. And so I needed to get rid of the coach. And because I don't have a truck, I chopped up the couch and I fit it into the dumpster because it expedited the process. And I didn't have to do that, but I'm so stubborn in wanting to do things independently. And so, with that said, I'm wondering if you found yourself in times where you were so focused on doing everything yourself, you're so focused on the identity of like you built this yourself, you paved the way, you've got a long way to go, you've got things to put into this. What are the moments where you've caught yourself in that, if that's come up for you?
Just in general, of like overdoing or like not asking for help, or just like not stepping off the rabbit wheel, because I could go in so many different directions.
Let's go with the rabbit wheel one.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess the first time I noticed this was like, I have a very type A personality, very hard charging, overachieving type mentality. Was when I was training and competing in CrossFit, where I couldn't really see the forest for the trees, and everything in my life was solely narrowed in and dedicated towards the goal of going to the CrossFit Games. And that singular focus or over attention on that one avenue didn't allow me to focus on my friendships or my family. I missed close friends' weddings and bachelor parties. I missed pretty much any event that you could think of solely to just get to the CrossFit Games. And for me, I love asking for help, but I also feel like I live my life a little bit as a racehorse, in the sense of like I have blinders on 99% of the time. And I can't see outside of that. And that's been a really big focus and shift in my own perspective as I am trying to integrate into being a full human being, and have good friendships and family and relationships, and have a great business that I love, but also one that supports my entire life. So what the blinders have come off at different parts of my life, it's kind of been a little bit overwhelming because I'm like now trying to balance all of these different areas rather than just like focusing on one, if that made sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the second part of this question, and it's a little rambly, but Second part is for me, I found that there's people who act almost like anchors that kind of pull me out of that tunnel vision. An example scenario is years ago, I didn't travel as much as I have now. And years ago, I had a really good conversation with one of my friends. Shout out to my friend Jeff. Him and I were sitting on my balcony, and he was like, "Hey man, let's go on a trip." And I was like, I can't afford it. Like I don't have the disposable income to be going on trips like this." And he gave me so many ways that I totally could. He was like, "Dude, just like use some of your nest egg, use some of your credit." Like it was always some kind of a barrier where I felt like I need this budgeted amount for something else that might happen in the future.
Mhm.
And he really helped me kind of break through that. And then from that, like I went on trips with various different friends groups and solo trips, etc. And it was because he helped me get out of that rabbit wheel, that tunnel vision. Have you experienced times when you've had like anchors in your life or even just like life moments where it was like, look, man, just go?
Yeah. So no, I mean, I definitely do, but to open up on a deeper level, I have diagnosed OCD. Um, and that can allow me to feel very trapped at times.
Mhm,
And I can make a ton of excuses around why I'm not going to do something, whether it's a nest egg or whatever we're talking about. And so for me, the and I'm in therapy for it. It's great. I hate it, but um, the treatment for OCD is called ERP, and it's like exposure therapy.
mhm,
So when I'm coming up to a barrier in the sense of like, oh, I don't want to do that, I have to kind of ask myself, well, like, why don't I want to do this thing? What is getting in the way? And 9 times out of 10, for me, it's fear of what's going to happen on the other side out there in the future. And my therapy is literally like, well, shit, you've got to do it then. Right. And I don't do it all the time. But there has been a lot of things in my life where, yeah, like I have had to push through the resistance. And on the other side, seeing that I'm completely safe and seeing that I'm okay and see that I was able to do it. And then the next thing becomes easier. So, like, right, I got divorced we started getting divorced in the end of December 2023. And then there's all the stories that come up around it, around dating again and, you know, having someone else in your life or something like that. And then you don't go on dates I didn't go on dates for a while. And it was a huge fear. And then you go on your first date and you're like, well, it wasn't a super big success, but like the world didn't burn down. I'm not a failure, like all of these different things. And you see, okay, well, I can go on a second date with someone else, or I can go on a third date. And then I could start this little mini relationship and see how that goes. And then it could branch off and go this way or that way. Right. Like, and it's these little tiny moments of stepping past the fear and just like saying yes to things and saying like 3, 2, 1, I'm just going to do it, that allow you to continue to do that, but in other areas of your life and push a little bit further and a little bit further. So yeah.
I like that. Like, even just kind of talking about that awareness where you like kind of required that exposure to things, and then you needed to close the loop and be like, look, nobody died, everything's fine. Like,
Mhm.
I can relate to that on a deep level, and maybe I need to be further assessed psychologically. But I am kind of curious as to like at what point did you have like a self-awareness peak where there was something going on with like OCD for you?
So looking back, I have probably had OCD my entire life. Or at least since like being a kid, because like I'm like a checklist guy. Like even when I was a kid, I would write down all the names of all my friends so I wouldn't forget one of my friends. Or I'd write down like every one of my video games so I wouldn't forget. Like if I wanted to play video games, I would just like look at my list. So I had like these little control things coming up.
Mhm.
And then in high school, when I was about to go away to college, uh, shamefully going to admit that I'm a huge mama's boy. And I was very much struggling unconsciously with the fact that I was just going away from home. And that spiraled into an eating disorder, where I was like severely controlling my exercise, significantly controlling food, And we just thought it was like, oh, wait, what's the deal with Paul and his body, man? Like, and then, it was a disorder for sure. And so like that was the next little bit. And then it was CrossFit. It was like this extreme control. And then I'm working through it, not really realizing how it was, manifesting in different ways. And then when I got diagnosed with lupus, that's when like my entire life changed at 27, where like my world just became so freaking small by all the restrictions, but then all my hypervigilance around the restrictions that were being put on me by doctors, the internet, blogs, articles, books I was reading. So like this world that I had while already relatively restricted because of the OCD just got way smaller and way smaller and way smaller due to my lupus diagnosis, to the point where I really wasn't like living at all. And I was just existing in my apartment. And I wouldn't leave my apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, I would only eat food that I cooked. I wouldn't go out in public because I didn't want to, like, I wouldn't even want to wash my hands at a bathroom's restaurant because the water wasn't filtered and they might not have had like non-toxic soap. That's what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I brought my own soap. I took a job as a project manager and I brought my own non-toxic soap to the bathroom, and I would only wash my hands with that soap. Like it was off the rails, man.
Damn. Do you feel like you still have that same kind of like constraint on you, or have you found ways to kind of bridge with the outside world a bit more, integrate with other soaps, etc.?
I've integrated with all the soaps. Thank you for asking. You want me to use a soap? I'll use a soap. Yeah, man. Like I am way further down the line of being, in the sense
Mm-hmm.
of like just being out there in the world. But like, if you go up to like one of my friends that's a free spirit, they'd be like, you are still so controlled and restricted. And like, I'm like, I am like, and I'm actively working through it. And I like spiral out. Like if I'm someone that exists on a routine, and if my routine is off, I get like very distressed. And so like, I just blow up my routine all the time now. I just say yes to stuff. And I'm like, and while I'm doing it, I'm like, we let a curse here? Can we curse?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. Like when I blow up my own routine, I'm like, I fucking hate this, but this is what I need to do. Cause like, I don't want to just be a person who sits in his house and eats vegetables with like a 6-pack abs and like is unaffected by the world.
Yeah.
I want to be like an existing human being. And that just means being uncomfortable, learning not to try to control everything, including other people. And it's fucking hard,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the work.
Yeah, I mean, there's parts of that that are like shockingly relatable. Like lately, I have been more diligent on my own nutrition, doing a lot of cooking at home, eating a lot of vegetables and fruit because I'm like, that's the safe food.
Yeah.
It doesn't cause any problems for me. But then also it's like, then I'm like, well, most of my best connections are made at like coffee shops and when I'm at like different restaurants and stuff, and I need to integrate that back in, even if I feel like it's just kind of like off the norm.
Mhm.
And I want to do a quick sidebar shout out to Aram Gregorian's event, the Real Coaches Summit. I'm integrating ads for him into the show now. Go ahead. I wanted to say that like I think what he's done with like the nutrition setup, I think it's a game changer. But I'm curious, like, have you found it helpful to kind of have sort of like more of a lean presentation of nutrition options at like a fitness event? Like, how did last year's experience for you go, or this past year's?
So I've made leaps and bounds slowly. And that was really the catalyst of like, I can't fucking be this way anymore. So like, and like, it was already way further than it was, but um, I was there and I was still getting some special meals made for me,
Okay.
which is like understandable. Cause like legit, if I eat tomatoes, my face is going to well up, my hands
Yeah.
very like flare. But it was like, they were making these meals and I was still like almost hyperventilating about it.
Mhm.
What if this or what if that? And I came home from that with like some really big reflections of the most important thing to me is connecting with other people genuinely.
Yeah.
But I have these things in my life that are blocking me from actualizing that or allowing that to be my true priority.
Hmm.
And whether that's like fear about getting sick again or like going into a big flare again, whether that's like, hey, am I going to be safe financially? And so like all of these fears are just getting in the way of what I want to do and where I want to be, and the person that I want to be. And so like, yeah, that's definitely helpful, but there's still leaps and bounds of where I'd like to see myself take it.
Hmm. Well, I mean, I definitely value that you were able to kind of find that middle ground where you could still be present at the event. Because, like, you were very outgoing, and I tend to be a little bit more introverted. And so you were making connections in every direction that you went. And you were very, like, there's no missing those connections. Like, I remember you chasing me down for business card, and I was like, bro, I got you. I got you. Because I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna bring business cards, and if anybody wants to like connect, then I at least have it written down
Yeah.
in case they can't spell my last name or something like that. Um, but yeah, it's just like it gives a good perspective that people can kind of transpose into so many different scenarios. Because for you, it's nutrition related. For other people, it might be finance related.
Mhm.
For other people, it might be geography related. Like,
Might be like a disability, even like movement related, right? Like,
yeah, like that's a really, really good point because it's just like there's there should be diversity in the fitness industry to where like somebody with one leg can effectively coach another person with one leg kind of thing. Like there's going to be a lot of different scenarios, like even just to make sure that people understand that I understand what it's like to have some limitations. Like I was born with impaired hearing in my right ear. And it's something that not a lot of people pick up on, but it's something that does affect your fitness. And so when you can kind of understand hindrances, then it just makes it so much easier to kind of like check the layers of an individual as you're doing a consultation or like look for like the cues and the signs and stuff like that. Because like the funniest scenario is when I'm doing jujitsu, if somebody has me like pinned to the mat and my left ear is covered, I can't hear shit. So they could be giving me like cues or being like, dude, you good? You good? Like
yeah,
I won't really hear anything because it's kind of like plugging both
yeah,
ears. Um, and I'm certain that there's a lot of like fitness professionals that have sort of like those like hidden little quirks about themselves, like different limb lengths, different chronic diseases, chronic pain, stuff like that. Um, there's a lot of cancer survivors in the fitness industry who take different precautions or have different experiences. And so, yeah, just for everybody to kind of see, like, it's not going to be perfect when you show up to things, but it's definitely going to be worth it. Like, it's
yeah,
going to be very, very enriching and very, very like we talk about how you go to an event or even just like if we talk about going on a trip or treating yourself to a massage, like you go to those things and people will tell you like you won't regret it, you'll get back what you put into it, um threefold, fourfold, 10x, whatever. um but it's hard to realize that it's true until it's like palpable, until it's
yeah,
like something that you can feel and experience. Um, but yeah, basically you being transparent in what it is like to be you when you're going about and doing stuff can make it so much more easy for other people to kind of see themselves doing it too. Which is why I think these conversations are important because a lot of people, like people who we want to help the most because they're furthest away from where they want to be, most of their apprehension comes from the fact that they think that we are all perfect, but many of us are not. Like we're all a work in progress. We're all kind of like we're not 100% battery life. We're like 60 to
yeah.
80% battery life. But on that note, you've coached a lot of people. I'm curious to know what has been the standout or one of the standout moments where you saw somebody who was at like the very beginning stages, very reluctant to start, not sure about themselves, maybe needed pep talk to the point where now where they're at is like night and day difference? Like, what was that kind of like arc like?
I'm just trying to think of someone that comes to mind right now. I have I have someone in mind, and he's been a little bit of a gold star in my life, more or less.
Mhm.
Like, I don't even want to say like as my client. Um, Man, I'm gonna fucking cry. Like, I love this guy so much. His dad had a heart attack when he was young, and he constantly was getting, um, the on again, off again wheel of starting, ending. And when we sat down in this consultation, and I just like sat him down and we talked, and I was like, "Hey, man, you've got to be willing to look like an idiot, and you've got to be willing to fail at this." And because we are going to fail so much, but you're going to fail with someone in your corner. And that's going to allow you to use the failure as a learning lesson to accumulate a small win. So, like in the beginning, it was a lot of just like our biggest wins were like, I found that that didn't work. I found that that didn't. And then now we're like a year and a half into the process. And like, let's put results aside, knocks out most of his workouts. When he misses workouts or misses weeks of workouts or goes on vacation, instead of it spiraling into 6 weeks of not working out or exercising, he goes on vacation for a week. He's back in the gym on Monday, right? Like the distance between missing workouts or his health behaviors or going off the rails has significantly shortened over that last year and a half, from like 6 weeks to like 2 days.
Mhm.
So his consistency is just incredibly improved because of the way he talks to himself. He shows himself some more compassion, and he's allowed himself to fail and treat himself as a beginner and not someone that had to have all of the answers in the beginning. Like a lot of people think they have to know what they're doing to start. And the only thing you need to do to start is to start. Like, and if you're here today and you hear that and you're like, yeah, we know that's the advice, and you're listening, like all you need to do is tie your shoes and go outside your door for a walk. If you're not doing anything, literally just tying your shoes with the intent of going for a walk. I'm like, cool, that's step one. Like I have a guy right now. Yesterday we talked on the phone. Dude, he has a 3-year-old. He works a demanding job. His wife works a demanding job. His wife has been gone 5 days a week for 2 out of the last 3 weeks. His best friend got married. He was in the wedding. And all throughout this, he found his dream house on the market, put in an offer. He didn't plan. He wasn't looking. Accepted the offer, and he had to move in like 3 weeks or a month or something. So he had to sell his house, all this stuff. And so we were getting good consistency with stuff, and it's really kind of fallen off. And I was like, walked him through what was reasonable and what wasn't. And I said, cool. I don't need you to commit to exercising, but every night, like the James Clear thing, you have to lay your clothes out and you have to put your gym clothes on top of your toilet seat, like the closed toilet seat, not, where the butt touches. So clothes and shoes on top of the toilet seat. So that way, if you like, you have to touch them and do it. And, what ends up happening, he's like, I went for a 10-minute walk, or I went down and I did 2 exercises, right? So like, it's these little things and setting people up with small little things rather than just be like, hey, here's your workout plan. It's kind of like, yeah, dude, just the plan isn't enough for you right now. Like, how do we cognitively get you to the workout? And sometimes that's
Mhm.
just the first step, and illuminating that.
I like that. I was gonna ask like a follow-up question. You just bridged right into it, and it was perfect. Because I think it's like little examples like that are what we need to put more of into the space.
Yeah.
I have lots of conversations with people about just like the storytelling that they do for their business, like just helping personify fitness for people who aren't into fitness. One example that I use all the time, I have a client, Carl, shout out to Carl. He's like He's been working with me since 2018. And when he kind of started refining his nutrition, one of the best methods that he utilized was taking some of his like go-to foods and making it himself.
Yeah.
So it's like then he could still have it. So the thing that he did was he would make his own like homemade pizza.
Yeah.
So he was making the dough, he was choosing the toppings, etc. And then he was still having pizza. But the difference that it made in his overall, like how he reflected on his week nutritionally was profound because it was kind of taking like his biggest weakness and turning it into his strength. Um, and so when I think about that and I think about how you said like laying out the clothes on like the closed toilet seat, I was like, man, like that's so simple, but like it would be effective for like 40% of people who struggle to get to their first workout. And even just like my parents have been seeing physiotherapists for various things, and they've seen kinesiologists, and they've worked with me on some of like their just like home workout routines and stuff like that. And I've been able to see like the perspective of each practitioner that they visited because like each of them have done their due diligence and they've done well, but they haven't necessarily kind of gotten my parents out of the woods kind of thing. And one of the things that stood out from the various different applications was when somebody pointed out to my mom that most of these exercises that they're prescribing could be done from the bed. So like you're laying down on your back, you're mobilizing your hips, you're doing some hip lifts, stuff like that, that can all be done laying down in the bed. And like my mom, she likes being active, but she doesn't necessarily like identify as somebody who works out. So to kind of just change the environment and just change the implementation was like a game changer.
Mhm.
And like I had her doing all the same exercises, but I told her to do them on the living room floor. And then as soon as somebody said, you know, you can do these on your bed, the buy-in was so much more. And it was just like these little tiny details.
Totally.
They just stood out to me profoundly. So I'm curious, have you ever encountered like a little tiny detail that you integrated into maybe like a long-standing client where they come across a plateau, you integrate this little tiny detail, and it's like the lights go on, they're clear on it now.
Mm. I'm sure I have. That's a really good story of like being able to do it in bed. Um, yeah, I guess like I don't know how tiny this would be, but like I have a client who works remotely and he does all of his workouts with an adjustable bench and two sets, like a set of adjustable dumbbells.
Yeah.
And he was really struggling to get his workouts in, and it was starting to become a hindrance. And I was like, why don't you just do one exercise at a time? Like set a timer every 2 hours and you go down and like, you don't need to warm up, choose weights that you don't need to warm up for. Just go in and do like some single arm rows for 3 sets. It'll take you 5 minutes at a pop rather than like, going through everything all at once. And it's going to be just as effective. Right. So like taking someone's workout in that scenario where they can move from home and just being like, hey, you could break this up. And it's a complete game changer. Something else that we see is like people who just teaching them how to align their week, right? Like writing workouts for people where they're super flexible rather than on Monday, you have to do this, on Tuesday, you have to do that. Understanding that like what matters most is that you're getting it all in, regardless of what that looks like. So writing things in a way for people that allows them to work out just Saturday and Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, here's your 3 days a week of programming. But if, your week goes to shit, here's your plan B. It's the same thing. It's going to be just as effective, but it's just going to be stacked over 2 days, right? So like little things like that and giving people plan A, plan B gives them the flexibility and cognitive, like it takes the pressure out of the valve of needing to be perfect. And that is what I typically see translating really well for people to be consistent.
I like it. Now, I'm pivoting our discussion a little bit. We're going to go into a different topic, but very much aligned. There are times when I'll be having a conversation with a client and they'll be looking at maybe trends in their weight on the scale. Or maybe they're doing like body composition measurements and stuff, and it becomes sort of like foggy. gray area as to like which direction is for them, which direction is progress, which direction isn't. And it usually comes to that point where it's like they have stopped losing fat, but they've gained muscle, but they can't quite see that distinction as to how that's still like progress. And so for me, I like to always relate it to the things that they're able to do now. Like especially if they've reported back that like they went on a hike or they went on a road trip to a nearby town and they walked like 15,000 steps, or they were able to play with the kids or the grandkids or whatever it is. Um, but it's still like people have these voices in their head. They're critical of themselves and like, no, I need to make this number smaller. I need to do this. I need to be more hard on myself. And I'm like, you gotta look at this from a place of compassion, because if you're not compassionate with yourself, the decisions you're gonna make from there are probably not going to be like, they're gonna be more toxic than anything else. It's gonna be like, oh, I can't have that. I need to shove that off my plate, etc. Long story short, when you think about this kind of stuff, or maybe reflecting on journeys of people that you've helped, reflecting on your own personal journey, because I know I can be critical of myself. I kind of find myself in these routines sometimes. Um, what are the moments of clarity that you have? Like the things that you frame for people, the things that you say, the things that they say that kind of make it easier to like put one foot in front of the other and take a holistic, healthy approach.
Yeah, like I don't have any taglines or anything specifically. I just really like to have people look at little tiny small wins. Like that's the biggest thing that I think people are missing is like I had like in my check-in form, my weekly check-in form, it always asks, hey, what, regardless of how, where you're coming in, what's something that we could look back at this last week and say went really well. And sometimes people be like, I have nothing. And then like when I'm responding to them in their check-in, I'll say like, this is absolutely not, I'm not going to like let this go.
Mhm.
There's something over the last 70, like over the last 7 days, what is that? Like 140, is it 144 hours in a week? Who knows? We don't have to focus on that. And then it's more than that. It's 168. I just did the math. So over the last 168 hours, something has gone well. And I need you to look at that and recognize it, because that's going to be really important for like moving forward. And like, while it's not looking at gratitude, right? Like, cause we could also be like, oh, let's look for things that we're grateful for throughout this journey. It's aligned to that. Like, if you recognize the things that are going well, things will keep going well. If you only recognize the things that aren't going well, things will keep not going well. Right.
Mhm.
So, in our brains are wired from the get go to survive. And to survive, you need to recognize threats. And so we're constantly looking for things that are going wrong. We're constantly looking for the threats. That we're constantly looking for what we're not living up to or how we could be better to make sure that we're safe. We're accepted as into society, which allows us to be safe. Like the whole thing, it's a riot going on in our head at all times. But being able to step back and like see some things that are going well will allow you to kind of reframe some positive moments, and that will allow the momentum to continue.
I like it. I like it. And it reminds me of a lot of my experiences with my in-person clients. I love training people in person. It's
Yeah.
just like it charges my batteries. That's what I was saying to one of my clients last night. I was like, I don't, it doesn't matter what time of day I'm training people.
Yeah.
As long as it realistically fits into my lifestyle, I'm like, yeah, let's do this.
Yeah.
And some of the things that I experience are people will kind of go into the environment of in-person training feeling like they're at a like holistic deficit, like that
Mhm.
they aren't kind of adequate as an individual, even if they're a high performer professionally. And in a lot of cases, like I hate that cliche, like I'm looking for high performers kind of thing. But like if they people who are saying yes to training, like if they work as like a truck driver or something, they're a diligent truck driver. Like they're showing up to their stops on time. They always know where to go because they're the type of person who makes an appointment. They show up to that appointment and they're at the training session.
Yeah.
And the other instances, they're the person who does all the due diligence in the different hierarchies of their company. They're looking out for other people. They're making sure things hit deadlines. But they come into this training space and they feel like they're not quite where they want to be. And I definitely find it's important to kind of like pull from that, like what are the little micro wins?
Mhm.
And when I first meet people, to ask them what their little micro wins are, or like what's something good that happened that day. In my experience, I find it takes some time for them to kind of open up and be like, yeah, this is a good thing that I'm really proud of.
Yeah.
And so kind of the way that I subliminally get to that is I'll just kind of like frame the scenario. I'll be like, I ask everybody if they've got a funny story from the week or from the day. And I was like, and everybody, when I ask this, is like, no, I don't. But eventually they get to
Mhm.
this point where everybody has some kind of a story for me. And what I've learned is in a majority of cases, as that connection progresses and they get more comfortable and they feel more just confident in the space, the funny stories translate to wins. Like they're like, oh, my funny story is like the other day I did blah 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 blah, and it's basically them telling the equivalent of a project that they finished that week, or them telling about a time that they set boundaries, or them telling about a time when just like their life was ridiculous and they stayed the course anyways. Like some of the funny stories are like, man, like my car got hit and I got this unexpected bill, but I'm here for my training session.
Yeah.
And it's just like these little details for me, like that's what makes me love training people in person because I'm like, I get to see this like experience.
Yeah.
But then it kind of becomes part of their how they go out into the world beyond the training session. So
Do you still train people in person?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like if somebody messages me after this asking to train in person, I'm taking clients right now. Like I obviously can't be as busy as some people, but like I try to maintain a roster of at least like 10 people in person,
Yeah.
if not more.
That's a pretty big schedule.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, it does fluctuate. Like there's times when it gets real quiet. Like sometimes several people have to put a pause on their training or they
Yep.
move on. Like I do business in a funny way where I don't lock in anybody into long-term commitments, but
Mhm.
the way that I carry out each session or even with my online coaching, the way I carry out each 4 weeks, is as such that I'm assuming that they'll renew.
Yeah.
Like I am just it's like assuming the close as far as like a sales approach goes, but it's not because I'm putting any pressure on them that they can't back out. Like with in-person people, I don't invoice them until after the session is done because I don't want them to feel like there's any kind of like mishandling of their funds or anything. Um, but yeah, it's just like I I want every training session that I deliver to feel like a really, really good one. I always make sure that people know how important feedback is, where if they say like an exercise is just straight garbage, I will look for a very equivalent but different exercise.
Yeah.
Like I hold my programming in a level of integrity where like I know that I know what I'm doing kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I also know that there's more than one way to do that thing. So yeah, like how about yourself? Like what is your are you mostly online? Do you do in person? Do you miss in person? Do you like it?
I'm 98% online and I'm working to shift it. Right now, I have two clients who I see for 2 hours per week. I think I have the availability to see one more for 2 hours per week. I think that would be my goal. Um, I would love to train people more in person. I love it. I get such a kick out of it. Um, I love online coaching, but when I get to see someone walk in with a shit attitude and leave with a smile on their face, like I could almost cry thinking of it. And you don't get to see that online. Right.
No.
And, the more people that you have online, it's tough to keep the relationships aren't scalable. Right. And like, that's what we've been kind of sold is like, scale your online business. And I'm still working on my thoughts and relationship with that concept. But for me, who just came on here and said like relationships are most important, I'm really at an impasse of what I want that to look like for me. Because I do want to make sure that when I'm showing up and coaching someone in an online format, that they get I'm showing up present, well rested. I'm showing up in a place where I could be creative to help them work through their problems. Um, and I found without stepping out from behind my computer or constantly be on the rabbit wheel of creating content or answering messages or writing programs, it's hard to feel creative and that you're problem solving for your clients. So the in-person stuff allows me to step outside, move and shake hands and like be with someone in person and see it. And then I'm able to kind of like bring that back to the online space. So I'm not sure if that was like a super informative answer, but I like both. I love both, but getting to be with someone in person, I think like is key. And I think the world's shifting back to wanting more in person. Um, I love the online format. It's more cost effective if it's able to work for someone and they are like dedicated to do the work. But people miss people, right? Like
Hmm.
it's so clear. I actually have a book behind me. I can never by Beck Murphy, the old Surgeon General. Um, Not going to get into anything political, but the old Surgeon General, I loved it. His entire thing and his entire movement was around loneliness. And I think loneliness and isolation are inevitably present. And we've tried to build community and forum through the online format. And I think it worked because it was novel, but I think more people are creating connection with other people. And I'm curious to see what that looks like as the world's moving forward, especially with AI coming in.
Hmm.
I think it's going to push people in person even more. I think people are going to get burnt out of the internet because it's just like blatantly not a real space at this point.
Absolutely. And there's so much that I have, so many thoughts that I have around that. I'll quickly say that if anybody is curious as to my thoughts on, I think it was a list of like 10 things that I predict for the future. I write almost every day on my Substack. It's at chrislittle.substack.com, shameless self plug. But it's just like there's a lot in our perception of how the industry should be that will shift in our willingness to kind of like identify the little like sparks that people are that there's a high buy-in for, and to cut ties with the things that there isn't a high buy-in for is going to help our longevity. So for example, like many of us in the space have identified there are like reoccurring sparks within that in-person connection. And people, regardless of the shifts in technology, are going to find that that spark is non-negotiable. And then within like the online coaching delivery, there's probably some shifts for people as they're looking at their revenue and they're seeing that it's like lower renewals, lower new intake, stuff like that. But they might have also found that if they delivered online coaching in three different ways, that there would be three different like ways that it would be received.
Mm-hmm.
So an example being like I subcontract for Alex McBarity's 18 Fitness. So I'm
Yep.
an 18 Fitness coach,
Yep.
but then also I have clients who I work with under my own umbrella. And so it's like two slightly different deliveries, but like the
Yep.
same product.
Totally.
And what I found is within the online coaching, there's definitely a spark to like the FaceTime calls, to like Zoom calls. And there's lots of people who I've worked with for multiple years online. And that's where their biggest buy-in is, because
Yep.
despite the fact that we're distanced geographically, then there is still that like deeper connection.
Everyone I work with online, we talk on a Zoom call for at least 30 minutes every 4 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have an automation set up on my back end that like tracks our last call, tracks when their next call is coming up. I'm trying to book our next call at the end of the call that we're currently on. So that way we're constantly making sure that we're in communication about stuff, during the chaotic periods. And like,
Absolutely.
I've noticed that people do tend to fall off with their training when they're not booking their calls.
Yeah. I think that in and of itself is an important insight for people, because even with like under my own umbrella, I did like a beta launch like in 2020 when I was first offering online coaching, where I do like a call every week, but like the price was like I was basically making a quarter of minimum wage with
Yeah.
my price versus what I was delivering.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, I need to refine this. So then it was like I would do like mandatory like check-in over text weekly, and then just if they had questions throughout the week, unlimited back and forth. Or sometimes if I noticed things in like their tracking, I would just give an extra check and like, hey, how are things going?
Yep.
And like I am able to objectively look at my delivery and be like, okay, there's some cracks in this. Like I think this requires a bit more like video connection. And there's also some things like what I've experienced in where it's like weekly video calls.
Mhm.
People will drop off because like that process for booking that call had too much friction, too much resistance.
Mhm.
So that's where I can see like an automation being valuable. But all this to say, like the main,
Well, the automation isn't to remind them to book the call. It's
yeah,
on my end. So like like I have a spreadsheet of like my last calls with everyone. And when the call's over, it just updates like automatically. So like in real time, I always know where everyone is. Because I did the automation, like remind you, hey, it's been 4 weeks, book your call. No one did it.
oh yeah. Like I think it again, it's layered because we can kind of look at it as like, is this a forward facing automation or like a back end automation? Or is it a like action based automation or a data based automation?
Totally.
Like sometimes for us to kind of just see like the graph of like what's happening. Like when you do new nutrition, you see a graph of like the macro spread, or you see a graph of like the energy balance, stuff like that. And it makes you more informed as to what your next move is.
Totally.
And so if a coach was even just automating things on their back end to see like, okay, I have like, I know a lot of the training softwares do it, but sometimes they don't do it gathering the things that you actually care about. But just visually to have that cue to be like, okay, like this person's making progress, but they're also that much more like engaged,
Yeah.
and this person's falling off, but they haven't been engaged in a long time. Um, Main point is I'm hoping that people who have noticed like a negative shift in like their business in the past year, or even just like in their goals, can audit and be critical of themselves, but still kind to
Yep.
see like what can be shifted. And the last thing that I'll wrap this up with is an example from myself of a time that I've had to kind of give myself exposure therapy, in some realm of it, like maybe not an official practice, but is basically for the last like 3 years, I've had a dishwasher that was malfunctioning. It was the first thing that I noticed was it would leak. And so I'd run the load and there'd be like a little trail of water coming on. Ah, no big deal. Put a towel under it. But then the latch broke. And so I'd like close the door, but it wouldn't latch, and it also wouldn't power on. And so I tried to like take it apart, and it had this spring, and you need like a machine to spread out the spring to get it to work again.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll just order one online. Then it was like $80. And I was like, I don't want to pay $80. Long story short, recently I drove by a store and I checked to see if they had the part. They had it. I installed it, but then the leak was so like distinct that it was just like you pour a cup of water in and it's on the floor immediately. I was like,
Yeah.
there's no fixing this. So the process that I went through is ridiculous from the outside in, but from the inside out, it's like I was thinking that if I purchased a dishwasher, I would never recover from this. And it's not like I didn't have the money in my bank account. It's not that I didn't have access to like that amount of credit or anything. Like, there was no reasons why I couldn't. But for like 3 years, I was making up stories in my head as to why I couldn't replace the dishwasher. Everything from like, oh, I might sell my condo one day. That's an
Yep.
added expense. And so yesterday I was like, I was pulling off band-aids left, right, and center. I ordered the new dishwasher. I got rid of my old couch. I was telling you I chopped it all up. I ordered the new couch. To chop up the couch, I had to get a reciprocating saw, but then I
Yeah.
needed a special blade. I went to 3 different stores. So I was like, by the end of that day, those little efforts felt like such a momentous occasion for me.
Totally.
But it's a game changer. And I would assume this is probably what it feels like for people to start training, for people to reach out to a coach, etc. Now I'm curious, have you experienced little things like that in recent weeks that are similar or kind of along the same lines?
Just blatant things that like where they were leaky and you have to kind of fix them eventually. Like you're finally at the point of like, I gotta just pull this Band-Aid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, maybe not in work. I guess like you said recent weeks, I'm trying to think of one that like I'm like kind of willing to share. So um right after the divorce, I moved back in with my parents. I moved in with my parents to just get back on my feet. And I made up a lot of stipulations for when I would move out. I have to have X amount saved. I have to be earning X amount. I have to be doing this. And when I would get to that point, I would say, well, it'd be nicer if I had that, or it'd be even more comfortable if I was earning this. It would be better if I was in that spot. And that went on. It probably only took me like 3 or 4 months to get back on my feet, but the whole story in my head, it took me probably a year and a half to move out, almost. Yeah, about a year and a half. So
Yeah.
an extra like year, more or less. And it was just like this story of I'm too busy with work, blah, blah, blah. I don't even have time to move. How am I going to get everything done where I'm not getting help from my parents to like, hey, can someone make dinner tonight? Right. And I'm really close to Philadelphia where my parents lived. I'm living in Philadelphia now. And then I got coffee with a friend and they're like, hey, my friend has a great place opening. My friend has a great place opening and you should go look at it. It was like, I would get in a 3-bedroom house. I'd get 2 bedrooms, one for my office, one for my room, all expenses like $1,500. I was like, and I still wasn't ready. And I finally was like, fuck it. I'm just going to do this.
Yeah.
Moral of the story, it got me out. I jumped in and it went to shit, right? Like 6 weeks later, HVAC leaked and the HVAC leaked and my landlord and I was like friendly with them too. I'm friends with them. I knew them as well. And they're like, we're going to put this on the market like in like 2 weeks. You kind of got to get out of here. They're like, you could stay as long as that we own it. But like once it's on the market or once someone buys it, you have to, jump out. And I didn't love that. So within that time, I lived there 6 weeks. I lived there 8 weeks. I moved back in with my parents for 2 weeks. I went to Italy on my first vacation in like 3 years for 2 weeks. I was back with my parents for 2 weeks and then I moved into Philadelphia. Right. So like, even then I bit the bullet. I jumped in, I did the thing. It didn't go right, but now I'm in Philadelphia in my own place. It's great. It's completely mine, not shared at all. And so like that ripping of the Band-Aid, yeah, it didn't look the way that we thought it was going to look. I probably lost a little bit of money that I could have had as well. Just from like moving in, moving out. It was a really chaotic period of my life,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm where I wanted to inevitably be. And just like the path didn't look there and the resistance to move, at some point, you just got to like rip the Band-Aid and fix the problem.
That's a good example. Like it's both relatable and I think it'll help frame for people that just lean into the chaos. Like it's gonna be chaotic. It's not gonna be perfect. Nothing ever is. But when you lean in a little bit, then things happen. But
Yeah.
with that said, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I just want to thank you so much for joining the show. And is there anything that you want to give a shout out to or promote, or like your social is going to be in the description, but anything else that you want to promote?
Yeah. Social at Paul Buono on Instagram, website, paulbuono.com. Um, I'm starting a wait list next week for online coaching spots. That's going to open up 1st of January. So I will be taking on clients 1st of January. And I wanted to just give that a little bit of a plug if you're looking to get coached, or if you resonated with anything that I said and you just want to have a conversation and see if we're a fit to work together.
Yeah.
I'd love to chat. No pressure either way, but that's really the big thing, is like, all I really do is coaching, online coaching and in-person coaching. I don't really have anything else to plug. And
Yeah.
that's the
So
deal.
my next question, last question is, and this is something I started off my podcast asking everybody. It's if you could give one piece of advice to someone on how to live their life to the fullest in the most authentic way, what would that piece of advice be?
Damn. I want it to be thoughtful. Um, you got to know who you are, and you got to know your values, and you got to know your priorities. Because you could get sold into things. You could get pulled in 1,000 different directions. At times, you may feel like you're doing some scummy stuff. At other times, you might feel like you're the best person in the world, and why isn't everything working out? But knowing who you are, what you stand for, what your values are, what you want to prioritize, and what you want your life to look like will allow you to show up accordingly and genuinely and authentically, and be the person that you want to be. So like, that's really the big thing, is know who you are. And that's not like an easy answer. Like, that's like you know, it's your life's work.
Yeah, I love it. And like that, when people are learning who they are, it can shift throughout each year as they get older. That's going to change and evolve, and things around them are going to change. But I think that's great advice. And I just want to thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you. I've enjoyed being here, and do it again sometime, maybe.